new GPU competitor just launched a new card that can not only game, but even support real-time ray tracing. But before I get to that, Intel just screwed over consumers. A new cooling technology could change everything in the worst news possible. Welcome everyone to GamerMeld. But first, there's been a new study and the science is in. Every time you watch a video but don't subscribe to GamerMeld, a new builder forgets to plug in a PSU cable. Panic ensues, and for the next 6 hours they assume something is broken. Don't let this tragedy repeat itself. Subscribe now and save a PC gamer today. First up for today, Intel just did something pretty messed up. As of September 19th, the company announced that their 11th through 14th gen Intel processor graphics will be moving to a legacy software support model. And this affects both desktop and notebook chips. What this ultimately means is that Intel will no longer release new features for these chips, and will only provide software support for critical fixes and security vulnerabilities. Not only that, but they will reduce the update releases from monthly to quarterly, and they're going to lose day zero game support. Now, I know some people will claim that this is stupid to complain about, especially given their iGPUs aren't that great and most gamers use discrete cards anyway. But their 14th gen CPUs literally had new models that released just last year. Imagine buying a CPU just 1 year ago and it's already lost software support. That really is absurd, and it honestly reminds me of Intel constantly releasing new sockets for new processor generations. They simply don't support their own products, and that's a serious problem. And next up for today, a brand new cooling technology was just announced that offers 3 times better cooling and can cut peak temps by a whopping 65%. The tech was just announced by Microsoft, and it actually uses microfluidics to carry liquid coolant into microscopic channels on the chip. What's wild is that these channels are carved within the silicon itself instead of through a heat spreader on top of the chip, and the channels themselves run throughout it in a leaf pattern. This is of course a very complex process because they have to avoid damaging the chip, plus they have to make sure to maintain its integrity. What's even crazier is that they also use AI to direct fluid to hotspots so they can better control the temperature. For now, this new tech seems to be built for AI chips, but as with all new technologies, it may eventually find its way trickling down to cheaper products, maybe even consumer chips. And next up, the worst possible news for anyone hoping to buy a next-gen GPU or even CPU just dropped. This story originally comes from a new report by the China Times where they claim that industry sources have told them that the price for TSMC's N2 process node will be more than 50% higher than N3. It notes that the Taiwanese firm's current best node, N3P, is around 20% higher than the previous generation N5. Basically, if this is right, or really, even if it's just partially right, there's likely going to be a massive price hike for TSMC's next-gen node. And while so far, I believe only Ryzen 10,000 will likely use this node based on leaks, next-gen GPUs will likely use N3P, which, like they said, is also more expensive. Either way, at some point, GPUs will likely use N2P, and as I'll get to in a second, time may not help price. Now, I saw someone try to claim that the higher density means more chips per wafer, but remember that companies increase density per chip to increase the performance and power efficiency, so you ultimately won't have any major cost savings from the higher density. And the bad news doesn't stop there because, as China Times says, next year mobile phone chips will enter the 2nm era. However, the industry has reported that TSMC's capital expenditure for advanced processes is huge, but the yield rate has already reached the standard, so there is no discount or bargaining strategy for the time being. And that means that the yield rates, which heavily influence price, are more or less maximized at the moment, so chip makers won't see discounts for higher yield rates anytime soon. And it actually gets even worse from here because according to this, there's been a really big shift in where demand is coming from. Usually a new process node gets their customers from mobile chip makers first. These are the ones who eat up a lot of the early adopter costs, with higher end chips coming in later for a discount. But this time, according to a new report, 10 out of the 15 customers will be HPC chips. And even though consumer CPUs and GPUs likely aren't a part of those HPC chips because yield rates seem to be fixed for now, they could easily suffer from a huge price increase as well. Ultimately, shrinking transistors is becoming increasingly difficult with each new generation, and this time the impact could be significant enough to drive prices sharply higher. And lastly for today, a new GPU competitor just launched a new card that can seriously game. I'm talking support for full-blown ray tracing as well as CUDA support. This is huge. As you can see right here, it's called the Finghua 3, and it's the China company InnoSilicon's latest GPU. Now, before you roll your eyes about it being InnoSilicon, what's wild about this is that unlike previous cards which used Imagination Technologies IP, this new chip uses RISC-V, which is of course an open source instruction set, and more specifically, it's based on the OpenCore Institute's Nanhu V3 project. And this bad boy is a beast. For starters, they claim that it supports all the latest APIs for games. I'm talking DirectX 12, Vulkan 1.2, and OpenGL 4.6. And like I said at the start, it supports ray tracing. And while they didn't show performance numbers, they did show off the card running Tomb Raider, Delta Force, and Valorant. Now, while it can game, it seems to be more of a jack-of-all-trades type of card. For example, it comes with a whopping 112 plus gigabytes of HBM memory, and according to this, a single card can handle 32 billion and 72 billion LLM models with up to 671 billion and 685 billion parameter models with 8 cards working in unison. So ultimately, this is more of an AI or server chip. They even mentioned gaming in the cloud, so it would be used to power cloud gaming instead of individual machines. But we know that the company makes gaming GPUs as well, so I would bet that a similar card based on this architecture will make its way to consumer chips soon as well. All in all, it looks like a very interesting card, though obviously I wouldn't get my hopes up too high given it was playing games like Tomb Raider, but it's clear that China is improving very fast. So Nvidia and AMD should definitely step up their game, and soon.